Hello everyone, today I'll be talking about Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird 2017, and I'll be specific in terms of focusing on the cultural context of this text. Now, this film talks about the coming of age and is set in Sacramento, California, and the film follows Christine Lady Bird McPherson, high school senior student, as she navigates the challenges of her final year prior to college. We would like to talk about post 9/11 America. It is set in the early 2000s. It's a period marked by the aftermath of the September 11 attacks and ensuing changes in American society. The early 2000s were characterized by heightened national security and economic uncertainty and a collective sense of vulnerability. There's this backdrop that this backdrop influences the film, reflecting the broader social anxieties of the time. For example, the economic struggles of Lady Bird or Lady Bird's family and her father's job insecurity are emblematic of the period's financial instability, and they symbolize how America was in the early 2000s, right? Then we want to talk about the economic hardships and class in terms of the cultural context. Economic challenges and class differences are central to the film's narrative. The McPherson family lives on the wrong side of the tracks, a detail that Lady Bird frequently resents, right? Her yearning for a different life is fueled by her perception of wealth and privilege, just like every other, almost every other high school student. It contrasts sharply with her own familial or family's financial struggle. This is evident in Lady Bird's interactions with her peers at the Catholic high school that she attends, where many students come from more affluent backgrounds. The film highlights social tensions and aspirations that arise from a lot of class differences, and this is very nice to be talked about in terms of maybe comparing it to Pride and Prejudice if it's on the syllabus. I'm not quite sure. Uh, it it um, it underscores Lady Bird's desire for upward mobility and a better life. Now, Catholic education and religious influence. Lady Bird attends a Catholic high school, and the film delves into the influence of religious education on her development. The school's strict environment and moral teachings they shape Lady Bird's experiences and worldview. It provides a backdrop for her rebellious spirit. So there's a lot of rebellion, but the Catholic school and the Catholic high school kind of stops that rebellious mindset and puts her in place. The Catholic setting also serves as a commentary on the role of religion in shaping one's identity and behavior, as seen as Lady Bird's interactions in the film with her teachers and her participation in school's activities. Now, the film portrays both the supportive and restrictive aspects of this environment. This reflects the complex relationship between individual identity and institutional norms, right? So, someone's own identity and how they're forced to be or act like specific, institutions since they are in a church. Now they have to abide by certain rules and regulations, but her rebellious spirit forced her to go against the whole concept of the church, and. So then I want to talk about that at its core, Lady Bird is a story about family. For example, the complex mother-daughter relationship, Marion and Lady Bird's interactions, they're marked by love, frustration, misunderstanding. It encapsulates the universal struggle for independence and acceptance. So perhaps this could kind of be related to Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, how the monster tries to seek independence, but at the same time wants to be accepted by people, but he's not, and then he turns against them. The negative effects of that. So Marion's practical approach to life clashes with Ladybird's idealism, and this leads to conflicts that are very much poignant and relatable. Now, the film highlights the generational and ideological differences between parents and children, which everyone faces, emphasizing the challenges of communication and mutual understandings within families. No matter where you're from, no matter what era it is always going to be the case. Then you want to talk about Lady Bird's journey. It's emblematic of her teenage quest for identity and belonging. Also, maybe compared to Frankenstein, if you would want to. Her decision to rename herself Lady Bird is also very important because it symbolizes her desire to carve out a unique identity that separates her from her family's expectations. So her rebellious identity and her rebellious personality or character is shown here. And this act of self definition is a form of rebellion, right? Against the constraints that she feels socially, economically, and whatnot. So throughout the film, she, Lady Bird, navigates various relationships and experiences that shape her understanding of herself and as her aspirations. Now, her struggles or her interactions with friends and romantic interests and authority figures reflect the broader adolescent struggle for authenticity and self discovery. Then the cultural and social landscape of the early 2000s in America, the cultural and social landscape of early 2000s America is reflected in the film's setting and soundtrack. It's very important to look at the angles of the camera, the soundtrack. Those are certain things you have to focus on. The music and the fashion and pop culture references ground the story of in a specific time, evoking nostalgia for for a second um for the period. So songs from artists like Dave Matthews Band and scenes depicting high school life, such as prom and graduation, they resonate with audiences familiar with that era. The film also subtly addresses social issues such as sexuality and peer pressure, providing a snapshot of culture and how it's like, right? So kind of reflecting typical American culture that we see on TV in the early 2000s. These elements contribute to the film's authenticity and relatability. It captures the essence of specific historical moments while highlighting universal themes. Then you want to talk about, for example, the contemporary issues as Lady Bird remains relevant today. This is important because it offers insight into contemporary issues, so the spread of misinformation and the impact of social media on public perception and the dangers of political extremism. Now, the film's exploration of fear, hysteria, and scapegoating continues to resonate in the world where these dynamics frequently manifest in various forms. The film's exploration of fear, hysteria, and scapegoating continues to resonate, inspiring efforts to protect marine life and promote conservation. Then you might want to talk about how the economic, maybe go back to the post 9/11 America and talk about the increased security measures are very important. The impact of the economy on families as well. Maybe scholarships and financial aid because Lady Bird's attendance at the Catholic high school is made possible through financial aid. Also, this kind of reflects the economic position of America in the early 2000s and how even until today we cannot just simply go and study in schools because it's very expensive. The elite leagues are the ones that are that look for that and that make it possible, but we need scholarships to go somewhere, right? Then you want to talk about how, for example, this aspect that she is provided with financial aid, this aspect of her life underscores the themes of class. Maybe Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice can be compared to this as well, and economic hardship as she constantly feels the pressure of fitting in with the wealthier students while being aware of her family's limitations. So the fact that we always try to fit in, but sometimes we don't. Um, Maybe how the film also talks about the contrast that Macpherson household with the homes of Lady Bird's wealthier friends, such as Danny O'Neill's affluent family. The disparity is evident in scenes where Lady Bird visits her friends' houses and observes their spacious and well-appointed homes compared to her own modest living situation. This contrast emphasizes the social and economic divides that shape her experiences and aspiration, further reflecting back on the cultural context of this text. Then you want to talk about maybe go back to Marion's sacrifices and how Marion Macpherson, Lady Bird's mother, she works double shifts and as a nurse to support her family, highlighting the sacrifices parents make for their children's well-being despite the misunderstandings that happen between her and Ladybird. Marion's pragmatic approach to life and her stern demeanor are often at odds with Ladybird's idealism, and that's why it creates a dynamic that is both loving and contentious. Think about the relationship that they have. We mentioned the changing of the names. You want to talk about the mother-daughter relationship, for example, the scene where Marion drives around the airport after dropping Lady Bird off for college, unable to say a proper goodbye. This captures the idea of loving, but also the inability to let go. So this may be also used in theme or issue when you want to talk about um, comparisons. Um, Lady Bird navigates different social circles. She tries to fit in a popular crowd, but also tries to maintain her friendship with Julie, and her interactions with characters like Jenna Walton and Kyle Shebel illustrate her attempts to reinvent herself and find her place within various social hierarchies, which also sends a message that we cannot fit in every circle, and some people will not like you no matter what you do. So this is something also a food for thought. Um, Again, we talked about the songs and the film's soundtrack featuring, like, Alanis Morissette and Justin Timberlake captures the early 2000s pop culture, also kind of, talks about the cultural context. And they invoke nostalgia and ground the story in a specific cultural moment, enhancing the authenticity of the film's setting. Then, perhaps the use of landline phones and handwritten notes in the film reflects the pre-digital communication era in 2002, 2001. I was around 10, 11 years old then, and I remember. So this setting emphasized the intimacy and immediacy of personal connections during that time. So highlighting the cultural shifts in communication of the past 2 decades. Um, Also, perhaps if we talk about the economic inequality, and we talked about how the family struggles financially, Lady Bird's aspiration to attend an East Coast college, despite the highlight of the costs, ongoing issues related to this. You have to have money to access education, and you have to have a job to access money, and this kind of all falls back to economic opportunity and how it's just very difficult no matter what. So I think I've covered a lot of changing her name and symbolic moments like the inability to say goodbye, confession and guilt. Perhaps you could talk about how Lady Bird's interactions with the religious authority figures reflects on the confession and how confessions are significant as well. Her occasional confessions in the film and the guilt that she feels over her actions reflect the influence of her religious upbringing on her conscience and decision making process. So, religion also has to do a lot with this. So, maybe to think about it for a second, if you somehow want to invoke religion into a text that compares, let's say, Frankenstein and Lady Bird, then you might want to think about how creating monsters is unethical and not religious, right? So, like, it's very much immoral because you are taking the role of a god and creating a creature that you then neglect. But then over here, you also want to talk about religion in a different aspect of how Ladybird, deals with confessions and guilt, and then the mother-daughter relationship, and all that. Then perhaps you want to talk about the Lady Bird's participation in the school's theater program. It includes the production of Stephen Sondheim's Merrily We Roll Along. It provides an outlet for her creativity and defiance against the conservative norms of her school. This film is a richly layered exploration of adolescence, family, and identity, and its cultural context marked by post 9/11 anxieties, economic struggles, and shifting social dynamics, informs its characters and themes. So it resonates with audiences across generation and offers a timeless reflection on the complexities of growing up. So understanding the cultural context of this makes it a very much powerful text to compare to many other texts that you might want to use for your comparative section for the ILCs. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope you guys benefited. See you soon.